Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk about permission classifications within Entra ID, right? And what are those permission classifications? So there are different levels, right? And all those levels would have a different permissions that we can grant. And those permissions are granted and supported only on the delegation permissions at this moment, but probably that is going to add more into the application level as well going forward. So that could be the future plan from Microsoft side, as Microsoft is building and working and adding additional permissions for different application levels, right? And there are certain permissions which are already available on the basic level and on the different risk levels, including low, medium, high, right? On the low risk, there are certain permissions which we need, or which each and every applications needs for setting up and using that respective application with single sign-on, right? And even if the user tries to access that respective application, even that time also all those permissions would be needed in order to access that application, right? Majorly, any application that are available, or those are the available and those are part of cloud ecosystem. That means those are the SaaS applications, and those applications would have all those basic requirements in order to let users to sign up and then sign into the applications and systems, right? And I'm going to show you what are those permissions and how we can set it up with the making sure low risky permissions are granted and not the high level permissions, because definitely as an organization we should make sure we have granted only the limited permissions with minimal risks as well, because we don't want to expose identities as well as any data sets and data endpoints across any of the third party applications, because those applications are developed and managed by some other organizations, and we really don't know whether those are the applications which are compliant with the compliance and the governance and security of the respective industry, maybe a finance industry or maybe insurance or any healthcare or any domain, right? So there are many things to take a look at it, and then we should be able to come to a conclusion where we wanted to classify the applications and minimal permissions to provide a respective access only, and not everything that we wanted to or we don't wanted to provide at all, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to share my screen and show you what are the different permissions and how we can manage those effectively. So starting with, let's go back. I'll go back to the Entra homepage, and from there, I'm going to show you where we need to go back and set it up with, right? So from here, you can see that I'm on Entra page under applications and their consent and permissions. So from here, we have class permission classification. So these are the three levels as I was talking about: low, medium, and high. So currently medium and high, those are in preview mode. That means Microsoft is building, testing, and maybe it is going to take some time to build that capability as applicable, as well as until and unless it becomes kind of general availability for customers to use it, right? And here you can see that these are the basic and low risky permissions that are classified by Microsoft for any and every application which we are going to use for organization or for users to sign up and sign in, including single sign-on as well, right? So these are considered with the low risk permissions, which includes the read user profiles as well as signing profiles, along with allowing OpenID Connect for single sign-on to get into the application, right? And then view users basic profile with the profile permission, then email address to read email address and make sure it is active so that user gets the email notification as well, right? And on the offline access, where it maintains the access to the data that users have given access to that respective application or service, wherever that user is going to go back and access that respective application. And user.read is the permission to allow users to sign in and read user's profile for that respective application. So these are the basic permissions, and these are minimal with the low risk profiles or the permissions. Now let's look at the certain permissions which I was talking about, where we can only provide delegated permissions at this moment. And those are permissions which does not need or does not require admin consents at all. So those are the permissions are supported at this moment. And if you wanted to add any permissions which needs the admin consent, that permissions is not going to be added and allowed to be added here and classify those permissions at all. Right. So let's go ahead and add, and I'm going to show you on all these three levels so that you get to see, and you can definitely figure it out as per the needs, how we should be adding permissions on different levels and what permissions we should be adding and use it. Right. So let's click on add permissions button here. And here you can see that we have graph permissions as well as some of the other permissions across the Microsoft Azure. Right. And so these permissions can be granted to read data, write data, and export data, and many more. Right. So let's go ahead and click on Azure or graph basically. And all these are the graph permissions. Here you can see delegated permissions are available, but we don't have or don't see the applications that's grayed out. So let's expand this one. And once we expand, we should be able to see all those permissions. Now, once it is expanded, you can see the permission and admin consent required. Wherever set to no, that means it does not need the admin consent. And wherever you see the yes, that means these permissions are needed with the admin consents, right? So let's say if I wanted to set this one, and I will also try and add this one. So now I'm adding both of permissions with consent and without consent, right? So without consent is going to be this one where it's set to no, and with consent is set to this one. It needs yes. That means this permission needed to be added by the admin consent. So let's go ahead and add this one. So now it is adding. You can see that permission classification updating. And here you can see partially succeeded. That means this has added the permission. So this is the permission that is added. It does not need the admin consent at all. And that is why it was added. But the other permission, which was not added and it failed because it needs admin consent. And currently all the permissions which requires the admin consent are not supported, right? So that is why it is going to be something like we can only add the delegated permissions. So similarly, if we move to the medium and high permissions levels as well, we would be able to do the same thing here. So let me expand all. So it's going to just take a minute or two to expand everything here because it's a big list, right? So let's say I wanted to add this one and app catalog as well, right? So from app catalog section, and one needs consent, one does not need. So let's try and add it. And here you can see that it is adding, boom. Here you can see that there's one permission added, but the other is not. Why? Because this permission did not require the consent, and that is why it was added. And wherever it needs, it is not going to add because this capability currently does not support admin consent. Or else we can just go back, and probably I'll just go back to this one and show you from here, right? And just expand it here. And from here, I think there's only one permission, which is this one, user impersonation. So it does not need admin consent. So we can simply select it and add it. So that is added successfully. But if I were to go back and add a graph permissions with consent, and let's wait for it to expand all the permissions so that we can see whichever permissions need admin consent. Let's say app role assignments and add it, and it is going to fail. Perfect. So here you can see that it has failed the permissions addition because that permissions needs an admin consent, and that is why it failed, right? So this way we can classify the permissions. And there's one thing to note is this currently only supports the delegated permissions, and probably there are different scenarios and different use cases. So probably delegated consent and delegated permissions won't be sufficient for the application or systems requirement at one point, but definitely there's another way where we can register an application or add enterprise applications and provide the appropriate permissions in order to let our work or project movement done, right? Because we don't want to be stuck at a situation where we are not able to provide the permissions, but definitely there are pros and cons where we are going to be adding the permissions, and which needs the consent. That means we should be able to add and provide the required permissions and use it, right? So if in case I wanted to remove it, I can simply click on this delete bucket icon and it is going to be deleted from here. So similarly for all the different levels, I'll just go back and remove from all the levels for now, and we are good here, right? So that is what I wanted to show you in this video, because this is very important and helpful to know and understand what type of permissions we can add, how we can leverage those permissions with the list privileges along with low risk levels, because we don't want to provide a high level or highly privileged permissions to the respective applications, which we even don't know or we even don't manage at all, right? So yeah, that's all for this video I wanted to show you and talk about. And let me know if you have used this before. What are your experiences? Have you faced any issues, challenges, any struggles or something like that? And I would be happy to discuss and collaborate on that. And let me know if you have any doubts, questions, something. And yeah, I would be able to take it further. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel as well, as this is going to add additional step for each video that I'm making, as well as the whole channel, right? And don't forget to watch other videos around Entra ID, Microsoft 365, and all other topics, right? So yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.